here with American Spirits, episode 23, after a bit of a break for the Christmas holidays and also other circumstances related to holidays, etc. But we're back. Joining me is the co host of American Spirits, Ryan Turnipseed. How are you doing?
Hello, I'm doing pretty well. Had a good Christmas. How are you doing?
Oh, pretty good. Had a fine Christmas myself. Dog sitting for my neighbors as they traveled to visit their relatives, and got to hang out with a an old boy and just chill. So, and of course, we have Mr. Auberon Quinn joining us again for our return. How are you?
Very well, sir. I fortuitously emerged from my eggnog coma just an hour ago. Has anything of note been happening?
uh, so, yeah, interesting you mentioned that because we had sort of had an arc planned out. If it's not obvious, we sort of have seasons of the show, and we're in our sort of foreign policy and intervention season, which unfortunately we didn't get to cap off at the end of the year. But maybe that's for the better or for the worse. I guess we'll find out. But certainly there are interesting, directly related foreign policy developments. In fact, people are even invoking the Monroe Doctrine in related to recent events. So uh, maybe it's good that this happened in the middle of our series due to our streams being delayed. So we will see. Um, Perhaps we will get into that a little bit as we read. Um, we're not going to discuss foreign policy and current events a ton here. So we'll see if that comes up. But what are we discussing today? It is a collection of essays, actually, by Garrett, the famous American. Well, I don't want to slur him as conservative, but I guess that's what he tends to be included with, right? Famous
Let's
conservative,
say
common
paleocon.
paleo-conservative. Thank you, famous paleo-conservative commentator and writer. Really is actually more what he's known for. He's a great writer, and this book, Defend America First, is less a book and more a collection of essays. And we have a few essays selected. Um, Actually, I realized I'm looking at the wrong window. I actually already have the essay pulled up for us on stream, which is totally fine. First essay we're going to be looking at in this book is titled That of Our Own, written on March 23rd, 1940. So, unless anyone has any objections, I will begin reading the essay. Excellent. Here we go. Quote: We could wish that a neglected book entitled The Contrast by Hilaire Belloc might be made required American reading. It was written between the World War and this one, meaning World War II, when there was time to think. The author's qualifications rest upon three possessions, namely, one of the fine minds in England, courageous wisdom, and a long intuitive acquaintance with America. His thesis is that, although American culture did descend from European culture, American destiny is separate forever, and that although the United States may belong to Christendom, nevertheless, and this is quoting Hilaire Belloc, quote, they are a part of it, subject to a cultural schism, the intensity of which is my whole object to declare. The United States are not merely an enlargement of our European culture, still less a mere branch of it. They create a division of that culture into two, themselves and the rest. The line of cleavage does not lie between them and any other subgroup, such as France or England or Italy. It lies between them and all Europe. End quote. And
This,
now
uh,
going,
oh,
yeah, go ahead.
this neatly sums up the thesis that we have been laboring to assemble these last 6 months. Sometimes it takes an outside perspective to really recognize things that are going on the inside. And I think that is the case here because America and Europe are different things. America comes from Europe, especially England, and it certainly shares kinship with it, but the conditions under which we were founded, the historical contingencies therein, have forged a new people and a new destiny. And This was recognized by Balak, it's recognized by Garrett, and we would be ill-served to forget it.
Yes, and continuing. And if this truth be forgotten on either side, or if it be overcome by emotions leading America to take part again in Europe's affairs, or Europe to wish it, then he thinks, quote, European and American culture are both doomed to receive wounds which may prove mortal, end quote. First and last, Belloc is European. He knows better than to break with the ancestry of his native environment. Only an American ever thinks of doing that. He says, and this is at the end, quote, we of Europe shall solve our own problems. Things return to their origin, and our Roman unity should revive. But the process whereby that peace shall be accomplished is not one which could be understood from the standpoint of the United States. It is our own affair. We alone understand it. And let me add this, every public man from Europe, especially every professional politician, who approaches the people of the United States begging them to interfere in our affairs is a liar, and the fine phrases about peace and justice and humanity and civilization and the rest of it are hypocrisy and a poison, end quote. When shall we learn again that Europe is Europe, America is America, and these are two worlds? When shall we believe again that our destiny is unique, parallel to nothing? Once we knew it, living by it, we came to be the most powerful people in the earth and made certain great contributions to the thought and life of the world. First was an idea of government. It was our own. We did not send it abroad. Yet it was as if we had released the winds of freedom dangerously, and what we had done was written in foreign tongues on many banners we never saw or heard of. There was our idea of neutrality. We were willing to fight for it, and did, for freedom of the seas and for neutral rights above belligerent rights. We evolved our own economic philosophy, not out of Europe's books, but out of our own experience and from our own ways of thinking. We made the astonishing discovery and formulated the thought that wages are paid not out of profits, but out of production, which means that wages and profits may rise together, if only you will increase production. That was a new kind of liberation. There was an American standard of living, the highest that had ever been known in the earth. There was an American philosophy of labor regarding the employee-employer relationship as economic purely. Politician, let it be. There were many American evils too. We were increasingly conscious of them. But as the good was our own, so was the evil unlike any other. And the curious fact was that when the envious and marveling world began to send economic experts and labor commissions to inquire how we did it, they saw much more of the good than the inseparable evil, knowing that evil, after all, is a relative thing, and that if a society on the whole has progressed in material well-being to a new level in human history, it can be trusted to absorb a great deal of evil.
If we can pause there, just because that's the long line of American heritage ideas and contributions summed up through this article. Which, by the way, if it wasn't clear to the audience, this was written in the Saturday Evening Post. This is not like your esoteric academic discussion. This was for the entire country to read in their living rooms or places of work or what have you. So this was very exoteric, this level of dialogue. I find it very interesting. Garrett, obviously being a non-interventionist or an isolationist, is another word that that group gets called. And the starting point that we have here for articulating this position is the heritage and what we have inherited as Americans from the beginning of our civilization to the modern day. It's not some wild, abstract ideal which was concocted. This is a very tangible thing that has been given to us. This is the America First starting point. It is, you cannot interpret what we have read so far and what we're going to read as applying to anyone else, or that it somehow includes people that are not Americans, or that it includes jointly Americans and some other group for that group's benefit. This is very clearly America First in its philosophy.
I should mention as well, we have the Entropy chats up too. If anyone wants to super chat there, I saw we had a salute sent in earlier. So just reminding people, Entropy is available if you want to use it. And actually, I do see Miss Dawn Browning, I think, used it. So thank you very much. Another thing here too that I'll just point out is, I make this point a couple times. I don't know if I've made it on stream before, but America's not Europe. I it's been a negative trait or tendency for people to take Spengler's civilizational model and apply the Faustian model to the United States of America. It's my personal take that America is distinct and separate from Europe. I think we've done a good job of demonstrating that on these 22, now 23 streams we're doing, and we have our own destiny. We have our own way of doing things. We're not merely a branch of Europe, right? If you agree with what has been presented here from Belloc and Garrett, America is not just a branch of Europe. It's its own separate thing that originated from that seed, but is not connected to it in any fundamental way.
Indeed. And the other point Belloc in particular makes here is that when we forget that, when we treat America as part of Europe, as something that is not separate from it, we injure both. We will see throughout these essays, and we've seen in our own history, that Europe has been no better served by American intervention in Europe than America has in the end of things. So it's an important point to make, that although our concern here is America first, it is also to the benefit of the world that we be who we are and not pretend or try to be something else.
And not only that, and this is a point that Garrett makes very strongly, we be who we are and keep it to ourselves, and don't try to force other people to be who they aren't, which is very important, because this is very obvious to me when I read things like this. It's very easy for me to just see the parallels in the modern day or whatnot, maybe perhaps not for people that watch. So as you read this is not just an attack on Europe. It's not really the purpose that this was selected. Instead of being for Europe's benefit or to go fight in Europe or something like that, since this was written in the Second World War, this applies to any other place on the planet where they try to involve American power, or American interest groups try to exert American power and force people to act like our civilization, or we fight their wars for their benefit, or we finance them to their benefit, or something like that. Anything that we are reading out here does not only apply to Europe, it applies to any other civilization that's distinct from us.
Chat has asked if I can pin the Entropy link. If only I knew what the Entropy link even was. Maybe Dawn Browning can post it and I'll pin it. I know how to log in, but yeah. I'm not a fan of streaming, guys. Anyway, let's continue now. Where was I? At the top of the page, right?
The American standard of living.
Yes. Yeah, there was an American standard of living, the highest that had ever been known in the earth. Oh, wait, I'm going backwards. Quote, sometime after the turn of the century, a change began to take place. You cannot mark it precisely. It became fashionable to plant old world seeds. They grew in soft, warm places, often in the gardens of the leisure rich, and flourished in academic soil generally. There appeared in the East an intellectual cult of disaffection, with a sneer in its mind for what it named 100% Americanism, and a pose of contempt for the wealth that supported it. Everything American was vulgar. Happy the expatriate who could live abroad with his dollars and forget where they came from. It was not only Europe's culture that was preferred. Her solutions also began to be admired. What followed was a new kind of exchange. Europe went on taking economic ideas from us, while we, for the first time, were taking political and social ideas from her. The first wedge was the idea of political labor unionism. We got that from England. It was alien here. Then the doctrine of paternal government, with the responsibility to administer human welfare, and the saying that we were 25 years behind Europe in social legislation. A country sending its wage earners to work in motor cars might indeed be doing less for labor by law than countries where only the highest paid workers owned bicycles.
If we can stop there real quick, just to get to the more perhaps more applicable point, considering the recent events in the news. this is not something that is really preventable. Any time that a civilization throughout history has involved itself in another civilization by war, diplomacy, trade, or anything else, it eventually starts to import traits and characteristics of the other civilizations. This is a point that Spengler makes in regards to Russia, but it applies just as well over here. Any time we go involving ourselves elsewhere, we will start to resemble the place that we are going.
You might say the Gedanken sind frei.
Oh, I can't pin the link because I'm logged in as myself and not the OGC. I just love streaming. Let us continue. Quote, all that was happening when the World War came, that chapter in world history will sometime bear this caption, America's return to Europe. What we lost at that time cannot be computed, not the cost of our war exertions, not the illusions that went in our slogans. Our own center, that is what we lost. That sense of separate destiny on which we had been building departed from us, and we have never since recovered it. After the war...
There, because that is the essential paragraph to understand the America First movement and the lens through which to view our present world, because this spiritual deficit, this I hesitate to say original sin, but this loss of our center was the inevitable consequence of going abroad in search of monsters. It's more than the money we lost, it's more than the blood we lost. We lost something fundamental to ourselves when we involved ourselves in the First World War, with catastrophic echoes down through the last century and a half.
Yeah, I'm just contemplating on that a bit. I will continue. Quote, after the war, we accepted the role of rich, prodigal repentant with a duty to restore Europe. It was false. We were romantic about it. Europe was cynical. It was a strange balance of trade. During the 1920s, we poured billions of material wealth into Europe. What did we receive in exchange? All those old world ideas, ideologies, and hatreds for which the unrugged American intellectual and an envious classroom mentality had been preparing the soil. Marxism, Leninism, Stalinism, Nazism, collectivism, revolutionary dialectic, the class struggle, youth movements, ideas of a state all-powerful and all-doing, planned economy, status for the individual, anti-capitalism, hatred of the profit motive, redistribution of wealth among classes by law, contempt for the parliamentary principle, government by propaganda, deficit spending, manipulation of the currency for political and social ends, repudiation of government obligations. Of such is the harvest, old world harvest in new world soil.
It's interesting. A lot of this is very familiar to us and resonates with us well. But when he talks about the repudiation of the profit motive and enshrining that as part of the American spirit, obviously that's historically true. But what do you two make of that sentiment today when we see, some of the unbridled excesses of tech companies and the managerial elite using the profit motive to trample people? How does that square with your guys' understanding?
For the longest time, I haven't spoken about these subjects because to me they're like all that I grew up on when I was first learning about politics and economics. It was this line of argument about the government and profit and whatnot else. So to me, this is all boring, but I have learned, especially over the last year, that this might not be as well known to everyone else. The profit motive that Garrett is describing it really does not apply to these very strongly centralized, almost oligarchical economic formations. Just because throughout most of American history we did not have such an economic arrangement. What Garrett opposed throughout his career, beyond just the intervention into wars, was the New Deal, and these strong economic interventions necessitate this oligarchical system of economics. So it seems that if we talk about the profit motive now for these large companies that are like the managerial elite, the technocrats in California, and whoever else. It's not the honest worker on like that owns like a New England dock or something like that. It's not someone that owns a like a prospecting company in California or what have you. These are people that have been specifically elevated by power. It's not the profit motive to them. I don't think is what he's trying to defend. This is not it's not an honest system. It doesn't have the other elements that he's saying we've lost.
As you said, they were sending workers to work in motor cars, and today we're building 15-minute sittings and erecting pods.
Yeah, I basically just agree with what Ryan said there. I also did pin the Entropy link now, by the way, or someone else logged into the account and pinned it rather. So thank you. Continuing, yes. Quote, as we reap it, Europe goes to war again. This happens in spite of the doctrines and solutions we had thought so well as to borrow them. Or do you suppose it might have been because of them? End quote. Just to be clear, this is like after World War One. So basically, he's saying, we took Europe's solutions after World War One, and how did those work out? They're not really working out well for Europe now, are they? Because it's the middle or the beginning of World War II. So what are we doing borrowing these ideas when they're starting another world war? Anyway, continuing, quote, however, as to that, and notwithstanding the resolve we intone to stay out of it if we can, our interest in the war is such that we cannot let it alone. We permit our emotions to become deeply involved. We see right and wrong. We sat in judgment on the preliminaries. We hissed Chamberlain for the Munich appeasement. Since then, we have hated Hitler officially. On Mussolini, we reserve opinion. We are so close to it all that a change of war ministers in England is news that runs under 4-column headlines in the New York papers. Russia's invasion of Finland produces many reactions here. One of them is dangerous. Why dangerous? Because people begin saying to one another, quote, could we bear to see Scandinavia trampled down by the powers of evil, end quote.
Well, that's an interesting side note there, that as he's writing this in March of 1940, Stalin and Hitler are still nominally allies. The non-aggression pact aligned them with each other, and although Stalin was not at war with Britain, he was supplying Germany with raw materials and very much appeared to be a member of the same bloc.
Correct. When did Barbarossa begin? June 10th?
June 41.
41.
June.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, 41. We're in 40 still, so yeah, Barbarossa's far away.
Stalin
This is still in the middle of war.
Officially a bad
France.
guy. A change which will turn on a dime, but at this point, that's when he's writing.
Right, and there's something very interesting here that I think that should be especially reiterated after the last few days. And this is something that he is noting 80 years ago at this point, almost 90, where he's saying that the reason that we end up having such a mobilized population ready for intervening across the world is because of emotionalism. There are deep emotions attached to these places, which, as we have laid out already, are completely separate to us in civilization, destiny, and all the others. That war propaganda relying on emotion is nothing new, but it's worth considering. Anyone watching who is conscious of their actions and everything going on around them, if you do have such a strong emotion or an emotional reaction to something, you might be falling into a propaganda plan that's been designed for you to have that. This is not a very sophisticated analysis, but it's one that always works somehow.
Indeed. Quote, for now beginning to make itself felt is what has been musically named the moral urge toward war. Out with business, the profiteer and the munitions maker. This is a thing they cannot feel. In whom does the feeling arise? In some of the best people, says the New Republic. Quote, they really are among those who are most sensitive to values, who live in the world of ideas, whose consciences and honor are not blunted by too much prudence. The impulse to fight is spontaneous and rises from what every one of us has heard and felt, that the reason it could start a prairie fire. That is the reason it could start a prairie fire. The great peril lies within ourselves, end quote. But the peril lies not within us. But the peril lies in being not ourselves. Where are the Americans who were themselves and knew it? Alas, it seems they are not among the best people. Where is the America that saw only the star of its singular destiny and pursued it? At this moment, it would be the hope of the world. Yeah, I'm just thinking about, America, taking the West. This is only what, 50 or so odd years after the frontier had closed, and it was well within recent memory that this, America pursuing its singular manifest destiny was all America was interested in, and since then we fought a world war. America in the crusading spirit, entertaining the fantasy of descending upon Europe out of the sky, to part right and wrong, to overthrow evil, to scatter its simple judgments about, is worse than a peril to itself and is a peril to the whole world.
Descending out of the sky to overthrow evil.
Yeah, this is probably the most pertinent paragraph. I'll highlight it because I can actually do that. This is probably the most important paragraph from the whole essay here. Namely, this part right here. It is a peril to the whole world. This crusading spirit descending out of the sky onto Europe certainly imperiled the entire world. There's absolutely no doubt about that. Because now we have globalism, right? Which is a direct consequence of, we don't need to relitigate World War II here, but certainly this paragraph is extremely powerful in being far too accurate, unfortunately, in terms of what actually happened. Continuing, is war we abhor? We shall never abate war by taking part in the conflicts of Europe. Is it the plight of small neutral nations that gives rise to the heroic impulse? Well then, instead of thinking to save them by the sword, we had done much better to be willing to fight for a principle we have scuttled, namely the principle of unviable neutral rights in time of war. This was the only nation powerful enough to defend that principle against the belligerents. If we had been willing to defend it by force if necessary, the world knowing for sure that we would, there would now be less terror of the aggressor in the hearts of small neutrals. Or is peace the matter of our ultimate anxiety? If that is it, then instead of indulging in the moral urge toward war, we should be putting all the intelligence and imagination we possess to the problem of peace, and how, when the war ends, to assume and discharge the responsibilities of world leadership. End quote. That's the end of the article. This part's really here too. Is America was the one country that could defend neutrality, fight literally for neutrality if necessary. But because America was not willing to do that, neutrality effectively disappeared in the world. Being neutral in the era of globalism is not possible.
Well, so this is a context from the other articles, since we aren't going through all the articles in this 300-page book on stream today. Garrett was very critical of what he started to call liberal internationalism that had replaced America's Monroe Doctrine. The part of the Monroe Doctrine that Garrett emphasizes is the part that says America will stay out of the affairs of other powers, namely the European powers, so long as they stay out of ours. Liberal internationalism completely inverts that. We're going to be involved in each other's affairs permanently. So when he's talking here about neutrality and small neutrals and whatnot else, the shared thing here is that America was supposed to be neutral, but as Garrett talks about in quite a number of articles, FDR completely destroyed that by things like the Lend-Lease program later on, or just by aiding the Allies, harming the Axis and whatnot else. By the time this essay is written that we're reading, he's lamenting about the fate of strong neutrals, this thing that we could have defended. He has already viewed our neutrality as a thing of the past. So that's a little bit of context.
So in this first article, having heard Garrett caution against involving ourselves in the wars of Europe and longing for a strong neutrality, surely this sturdy peacenik is in favor of sticking our head in the sand and lying supine without defense before a hostile world, correct?
If only there was multiple articles in here on the defense of America face of the world and defeatism and all this other stuff. But no, the answer is no. He was not a defeatist, if you will.
Do tell.
Yes. I'm not sure if it's the second or third article we have queued. I think I have the second one.
Yeah, the second one. Yeah.
Yeah,
So
I mean,
leading into. Yes.
So
I'm aware you were leading into it. I'm just
so this next article that we're covering, or at least on the list that I have, is "Will We Do It?" That is the one that we're referring to, correct?
Correct.
So we have "Will We Do It?" which appeared in the newspapers July 6th, 1940.
Which
and
for
Garrett's-
World War II conquest is as France is collapsing beneath the German blitzkrieg.
Right. And he starts. We do not believe the great ways of thinking and feeling that have made this country what it is can be overthrown. They may be betrayed. Therefore, we say, saying it bluntly as a challenge, that for a time already too long, the American people have been out of character in their emotional premises, in their reactions to evil, and in their choice of mentors and leadership. And if the principle of free government were really in danger in the world, it would be owing less to the rise of the totalitarian powers than to the softness of a people upon whom freedom has conferred incomparable gifts. Not the first bad sign, perhaps, but certainly a very wrong turn, was when the country followed the magicians who said there was an easy way out of depression. Repudiation of debts and contracts, debasement of money, inflation, confiscation, redistribution of the national income by law, then recovery, the more abundant life, less work for more pay, and security forever. All of that was wishful thinking. Such was the beginning of a headlong flight from individual responsibility. It was the beginning of a dangerous habit of soft living unearned. We presented the spectacle of a people trying to consume more than they had produced, and able for a while to do it because they had been so rich. We had the finest industrial machine in the world, and for 7 years we have been consuming it. Do you know what that means? Take a single fact as it was stated by Mr. Hoover, that according to a recent census of machine tools in the United States, 70% of them now are more than 10 years old, whereas in 1932, only 52% of them were more than 10 years old. And no move had been made to enforce an embargo up to June 4th. So this is something that I would like to emphasize here. Just because I've been astounded, this line of thinking seems like it's something out of Aesop's fables. It seems like something I would tell my children, that you can't just have everything without having the work. If you want to consume more, you will consume more, and if you haven't produced it, you're going to run out of what you're consuming. You'll be weaker, you'll be softer, and whatnot else. This seems very ancient in its wisdom. Garrett is talking about that here. But I see this everywhere today, right, left, young and old, people that think we can actually just get more, live easy, live softly, without having to sacrifice and produce it. This is a strange belief that people still have that should be better.
We have a knowledge economy now. Who cares what our industrial capacity is? We can outsource all of that to China, and there will be no blowback, and we can live high on the hog off of our intellectual capital.
Right. Yes. We can outsource. We can steal resources from other countries. I've also been assured recently that we can just take resources and consume them as if this will have no further consequences on society. I've been told that we can also just selectively intervene into the economic status of people to just force out more prosperity than they themselves were making. This is, I'm still shocked that we have to keep reiterating this every generation. It seems firsthand to me, but I'll continue. All this time, certain hungry nations, commonly called the have-nots, and first among these the German people, were working twice as hard as we were, consuming not more, but much less than they produced, in order by heroic self-denial to create a surplus. We were purposely destroying our surpluses, saying it was ruinous. They were putting theirs into war machines with intent when they were ready to turn them on the soft democracies and take from them what they wanted. We knew it. We watched them do it. Behaving as if our power were still intact, we warned them not to do what they were intending to do. Yet they went on as if we had said nothing. They knew what we had done to our strength, that we had let our armaments rust. So this is also something that I really wanted to point out. Part of national strength or security, defense, or whatever else, outside of the military, the armaments, and whatever else is actually the state of the country, the production. What do we have? Are we mentally ready for it? We haven't actually gotten rid of this mindset that Garrett is critiquing here. We have had times since and during World War II where sacrifice has been imposed, but we have not had like we had before the First World War, where there was a natural thrift, a natural self-denial for production and surplus. We have not actually had that civilizationally for a long time. What could this mean for our security? Garrett continues, "From here on, it is painful. When the war the Germans had been preparing was imminent, what did this country, the richest, most powerful republic that ever lived on earth, what did it do? It adopted the thesis that its own first line of defense was in France. It would not itself go to the battlefield, never. Yet the aggressor had to be stopped. The free governments of the world must stand together. Therefore, it would sell food, supplies, planes, and war munitions to France and England, provided they came in their own ships to get them and paid cash. It changed its neutrality laws accordingly, and argued as it did so that it was helping to save democracy, keeping itself out of war, and doing business, all at the same time. And such was the leadership that the people followed, apparently unaware that if the thesis were true, their country's behavior was pusillanimous."
Right. So, do you believe your own rhetoric? Is what he's asking here. If the United States in 1940 really believes Germany to be an existential threat to the United States, you'd expect that a magnanimous country would send its own soldiers to fight and would not, do what was originally called the cash and carry program, where the Allies had to pay cash for their war materials and send them over in their own ships. Later on, the Lend-Lease program, where we let them buy them on credit and ship them over in our ships. But if we were really serious, if we were a serious country, we weren't acting like it.
Right, and this is a major theme, especially during 1940. He is very angry that we are just going to let ourselves stay in this limbo of intervening, but saying we're not. And it's because Garrett knew that we were just going to get involved, and he didn't want us to be involved. So he ended up being correct. And he continues, "The thesis was false, that France was our first line of defense. Our first line of defense was not in Europe. It was here, American civilization, that is our own possession. It could not be saved in Europe or defended there. We are its sole defenders, and it can be saved only here. Well then, the war
Wait. You're telling me that we can't fight them over there, so we don't have to fight them over here?
That is exactly what he is critiquing in 1940, yes. Once again, there's just so much that this author is criticizing that keeps popping back up, even though it is absurd on the face of it. So he continues, "Well then, the war came, and suddenly it appeared that the strength of the aggressor had been fatally underestimated. Thereupon a great voice was heard in many places at once, as if it were the American voice, saying we must rush to the side of the Allies with material aid, with credit, munitions, anything but men, because it would be cheaper and more intelligent to do that than to let the war come to us, and because, we quote it exactly, the success of the Allies is vital to us." We do not believe that was the American voice. It was the voice of fear, to say no worse of it. Vital is not a word to be misunderstood. It means something essential to life. Was it the American voice saying the life of this American republic was at stake on the outcome of a war in Europe? Even such a thing as the fall of the British Empire. Never had the American spirit a voice like that.
Well, it's funny because that's quite literally what people say now. About, say, the war in Ukraine, and even if we go into Europe and take the example of Britain here, I mean, is the life of the British monarchy is that at stake in Ukraine? And if it is, why are they not sending their army to fight there? There's a very, very ripe example of this exact sort of.
Even more on the nose that Lindsey Graham's quip to the effect that $1 billion was a cheap price to pay for 100,000 dead Russians.
And then similarly throughout most of the time that I've been alive, just because I've been around, especially evangelicals that really like the place, the standard line with Israel is that it's the outpost of Western civilization in the Middle East, and that if it falls, everyone else is going to fall too. It's vital to the West, or to America, or to Christianity, or whatever else. This is the exact same line of reasoning that's used in the Middle East, Ukraine. We're probably going to see it elsewhere too as things continue to develop. But it's important to keep in mind what Garrett is saying here. None of this stuff outside of the United States that does not involve the United States or the Americans, the people itself, or the spirit. None of these places is vital to us. Are vital, rather. So he continues. May came. The historian who examines the American newspapers for the month of May 1940 may wonder how much of ourselves we saw in that mirror. What had happened? The power of the German war machine had been revealed. Its triumph was a definite possibility. The fall of the British Empire was imaginable. And the American mind passed through the strangest experience of its life. The emotion was that of dread, acted upon by hysterical mentorship. If we may speak of the national mind, certainly never had its behavior been so unimportant, so weak against the impact of deformed ideas crashed forth before they were born, such as the idea that we should forsake our political traditions and name Mr. Roosevelt on both party tickets, because that would be a demonstration of unity, meaning mass-mindedness, and it would be dangerous in this emergency to change leadership. The president's own first contribution was a defense message, hastily prepared, in which he suggested how easy it would be for the aggressor to get here with bombs, unless we were prepared to stop him en route, which we were not. He imagined that adequate American preparedness would require 50,000 airplanes, and then asked Congress to increase the regular Army and nation appropriations by a sum not much more than the amount it was voting for the WPA program.
Right,
Less than
so
2 weeks.
New Deal context there. So the WPA, the Works Progress Administration, was famously a New Deal agency created to solve unemployment, basically, and was infamous for things like having one gang of workers dig holes and then have another gang of workers follow to fill the holes, purely for the purpose of fiscal stimulus.
Right, and it was a massive sum of money that was being spent.
Right.
But
so Roosevelt has issued this call for 50,000 airplanes, which would be more than all the warplanes existing at the time. And in pursuit of that call, has asked for about as much money as he was using to dig ditches and fill them.
Right. And while we're still paused before we resume, I do find this interesting. Garrett has this idea that we would be already selling ourselves out, destroying our soul, forsaking our heritage, if we were to just like rally behind this person like Roosevelt doing what Roosevelt was doing in order to protect America, the American people, the American tradition, and whatnot else. He already viewed this as sort of a surrender, but
it goes to show you just how deep you can see. If you knew nothing else, just from reading this, you could see how deep the propaganda was running at the time, given that it even made sense. There was a context for him to write this in where it made complete sense. The idea that Germany was an existential threat to America in 1940, and as is quoted here, that they're going to be able to bomb us, basically at will, and unless we somehow stop them with countervailing aircraft. I mean, it's absolutely preposterous.
It's an impossibility.
Yeah.
So,
but people believe some significant quantity of people, especially in government, actually believe this, that there was a real existential threat to America by Germany. So you can kind of comprehend even why some people in Britain or France today might actually be led to believe that about the Russian Federation, for example.
Or here, it's not like in this exact same time frame we aren't getting our own share of war propaganda. So it's something to keep in mind, is that this is an ongoing thing that people do fall prey for all the time. Like, looking back at this now, this is absurd. Yet this was the mainstream position. This what FDR proposed and said. So Garrett continues. Less than 2 weeks later, he was saying to reporters at a White House press conference, as reported in the New York Times, quote, that there was no reason for the country to become discombobulated. The women of the country would not have to give up their cosmetics, lipsticks, and chocolate sodas in consequence of the preparedness program. The whole idea is that the present state of international affairs calls for an outlay of about $1.25 billion over and above the $2 billion that were being spent on the military and naval establishment. 3 days later, he was saying in another message to Congress that, quote, the almost incredible events of the last 2 weeks made it necessary to appropriate another $1 billion for defense. While the Germans were...
Roosevelt was lying.
Yes.
Here he's saying Roosevelt's promising guns and butter. We can build an air force of 50,000 airplanes, and you can still have your chocolate and your cosmetics. And he was saying this, to keep public support going towards war. But of course, in the event, we did get rationing. You didn't get your silk stockings, so famously. You didn't get your lipsticks. You didn't get your chocolate sodas, and that's just rational. You can't build a giant war machine and have a giant consumer economy. But it was necessary for the propagandists to promise that in order to get their giant war machine.
One does wonder what the consequences of what we try to do today with the giant war machine and the giant economy are, and what are those consequences? This prosperity out of nothing. Maybe it would destroy a society or dissolve it.
It could hollow it out from the inside, one would suspect.
So he continues, in contrast, while the Germans were doing without butter and buying one cigarette at a time in order to have guns, we were changing our automobiles once a year. We have not manufactured a big gun in many years, says General Marshall, our chief of staff. But it would take about 2.5 years to make a 16-inch gun and carriage for our coastal defense. We are not prepared to fight the aggressor, yet we defy him. He shall not make us give up any of our social gains, says the president. He shall not upset the normal American way of life. American women shall have their cosmetics still, in spite of him. Preparedness, the easy way. If the government knows what the problem is and comprehends it even dimly, it is treating the American people as if they were children, unable to bear reality. If it does not know, its incompetence, hitherto an economic disaster only, may come to be remembered as a calamity.
Yeah.
Well, we might be getting ahead of ourselves a bit, but it's quite clear that this 80-year mode of government has in fact turned the American people into children unable to bear reality. That is what has happened.
Yeah, very deliberately so. And Garrett here is not attacking preparedness. He's attacking the lie that you can get something for nothing. As we'll see further on in the article, this article is actually a call to sacrifice for American defense, to sacrifice to defend America first, and to dispense with the lies that we can build a war machine, go overseas, and also be comfortable.
Or similarly, defend ourselves in neutrality and without any sacrifice whatsoever. This is the other paradigm that he's attacking. So this is once again a mindset that is still prevalent even on the right, that we can just have it all without any sacrifice whatsoever. People believe this still. And he continues, the problem is not that we stand alone in this hemisphere, with not one powerful friend in the world to help us defend it. When was it that we stood not alone here? Where was that powerful friend in the world ever willing to help us defend American civilization? We are sick of hearing that the British Navy all this time has been defending our Monroe Doctrine. More than once, we have been willing to fight the British Navy for it. Our part is to stand alone for as long as we have the hardihood, the spirit, and the fortitude to do it, And when we haven't, we may as well stop talking about American destiny. So this is absolutely fascinating, just on a soul level or on a civilizational level. There is no outsourcing American defense and independence. It will just destroy the soul. They're the civilization.
And
does that mean we can't outsource it to our outposts in the Middle East?
Or Europe or the rest of NATO, one might think.
Those would be logical corollaries. And
Yeah.
again, we see one of the running themes of this series is the winnowing of American virtue. He's appealing to an American virtue of self-reliance, of ruggedness that is in his time being, and by our time has quite advanced to be, enervated.
Yes, we remind the audience that the primary purpose of this entire show is to get to the bottom of what is an American, and these virtues that Garrett is describing here are one of the fundamental aspects of that, despite the greater ramifications and domains in which this essay and other things we've covered reach. That is the core that we are looking for here, is the core of the American spirit, the American ethnos. I mean, the show is called American Spirits after all.
Correct. And yeah, everyone listening should notice all of the appeals to American civilization here. So, Garrett does continue. No, the problem is that a balanced distribution of power in the world has been upset. A new and frightful power has appeared, an offensive power moved by an unappeasable earth hunger, conscious of no right but the right of might. It has not threatened this country with invasion, at least not yet. It does threaten the Western Hemisphere by economic and political designs in the Latin American countries, and this for us is an ominous fact.
Are either of you detecting any Germanophilic revisionism in this strain of thought?
I'm struggling to see any of it, quite frankly.
Yeah,
it's pretty
well, it's
clear.
an important point to make. Garrett
Right.
Garrett isn't writing what he's writing because he loves Germany or something. He's writing it because he loves America, and he correctly sees that America must look to itself first.
Right. I'm very happy that you're pointing out the lack of Germanophilia, because there's also this meme going around that the isolationists, so-called, of this time frame just were a bunch of Germans with German last names in the German parts of the country that just really liked Germany, as opposed to what the rest of the country wanted to do. Here you have Garrett, of English surname, talking about that it doesn't matter if we really like or really dislike any of the other groups. This isn't about emotions liking
even when we do dislike them, even when their offensive power is moved by unappeasable earth hunger.
Right.
Oh, and he gets more into the obvious non-Germanophilia in the next paragraph. This actually touches on an important point where, if you do the same now, mostly in relation to Russia, but it could also be in relation to other groups. There's a slur called third worldist. People slur you as a third worldist if you don't take this aggressive or even aggressively neutral, perhaps, which is actually even a more direct corollary. I mean, if you maintain a neutrality or even a friendliness towards, certain other outside elements, you get this slur, just like people were slurring people as, being Germanophilic or, secret Hitler or something. At this time, it's the same now. So I know people aren't necessarily aware of that, but I encourage the audience to remove the term third worldist from their vocabulary, because it is in fact a slur used against people in the same way slurs were used against people against Garrett back in the day.
Very good. So I will. I'll continue slightly redundantly. It does not threaten the Western Hemisphere by economic and political designs in the Latin American countries, and this for us is an ominous fact. But the larger aspect of what has happened in that is that the world is in a state of unbalance. Until an equal defensive power has been created in the hands of people who prefer peace to war, there will be no safe living in it, no security for free government. So this is, sorry for stopping so much, but this is also very important. You actually want to prefer peace to war if you want to, say, keep the world at peace. You do not keep the world at peace by really loving the wartime, loving going to war, loving the aspects of war. You actually have to prefer peace to war in order to obtain peace in the first place.
And preferring peace to war does not imply eschewing power. Quite the opposite. We must create a defensive power equal to the aggressor's power in order to affect our preference for peace.
Correct. And this just all seems so basic, but I've seen a lot of reasoning over the past year, actually. This isn't actually recent at all, but over the past year, I've seen a lot of reasoning saying that people that want peace are not actually going to get it because they won't do what's necessary for peace. So the only way that you can be safe geopolitically is if you welcome the conflict or something like this eschewing of peace totally in favor of power, when in actuality, if you want peace, you have to prefer peace with power.
Imagine if America had taken that line of thought during the Cold War.
Or any other time that we've been on the world stage, it would have been much more different.
Yeah, you know, the United States actually did prefer peace during the Cold War. That's why the world still exists as it does.
Yeah, that's what mutually assured destruction was all about. And we lived.
So, Garrett continues, who shall create that equal defensive power and restore the balance? You have only to ask the question to get the answer. There's one country in the whole world that can do it. In that simple sense, it is the United States against Germany, now or later. And that is not to speak of war. It is the minimum price of peace. The cost of doing it, in terms of self-discipline, harder living, more work, may be terrific. This is the truth that we have so far declined to face. It might well cost us not
so
some...
Garrett got the details wrong, but he got the general situation exactly correct. Again, in 1940, Stalin was still Hitler's ally, but in the end, Germany was crushed and it became the United States against the Soviet Union. And it wasn't to speak of war, it was peace.
So, and just to continue here, because I feel like this will be important for any other points on this. It might well cost us not some billions more or less to be voted by Congress, not a 10% increase in the income tax, but possibly a quarter of our total national exertions for several years. There is no easier way. 1,000 airplanes a day if necessary. That is the American voice. It is possible, but how many of us realize what we should have to do without for 1,000 airplanes a day? What we will, that we can do.
Yeah, so he's saying Roosevelt should get his 50,000 airplanes, but let us make the sacrifices necessary to make that happen and not pretend we're going to have butter and guns.
And also the other thing that was a jab at Roosevelt as well is that not only should he get his planes, but he also needs to stop preferring war to peace. This is a long-running theme. Garrett was certainly in the camp at the time that Roosevelt was trying to walk us backwards into war. So this whole article is a giant assault against Roosevelt's plan that you can have it all. We need a military machine. We can have peace, but we actually don't want peace. We want to invade Europe and Japan and wherever else. I mean, could you imagine if we had anyone at the helm after Roosevelt that wanted to invade half of the world, to exert American might, walk us backwards into war? Perhaps that would be fascinating.
A terrifying hypothetical.
So with that, that's our second article done. I can keep reading this next one, or if anyone else wants to take it.
I can take a turn if you like.
Wonderful.
Excellent.
In a kind of this is called While There Is Yet Time to Think. This was written September 7, 1940, as the Battle of Britain is at its climax. In a kind of hypnosis, produced partly by propaganda, designed for people who believed themselves to be cynical and immune, partly by a sincere crusading evangel carried on by those whose emotions, as we think, have overcome their reason, but mainly by a government whose foreign policy, to call it such, has been compounded of a spirit of moral grandeur, inspirational heroics, delusions of a military power not in being, false promises, and panic. This country now goes where it does not look and looks where it does not go. If it should come awake one morning to read in the newspaper headlines or hear by the radio that it had walked backward into war, this being written 3 months before December 7th, 1941.
Well, more than a year, actually. Remember, because we're in 1940 still.
Yeah, so this is still...
same mistake I made earlier.
A year and 3 months, sorry. It would take it, no doubt, as having been somehow inevitable from the first, and yet nobody would be able to say quite how or why it happened. As the hagfish enters the body of its victim unawares and slowly displaces it by devouring it, so it is that the ideas that were clear and virile in the beginning have been devoured by new meanings with no change in the word shells, until now you may be called an anti-American, a fifth columnist, or an appeaser, if you doubt that the only way to keep America out of war is to get into it, that to save ourselves, we first have to save the British Empire, or that our first line of defense has always been the English Channel. So,
I sympathize so hard with that entire section.
Yeah, there's several things here. First off, you'll note that in the article written 3 months prior, France was America's first line of defense. Now we're saying the English Channel is America's first line of defense. The other thing he makes is this brilliant point about word shells. Equivocation is the most insidious of all fallacies, where you use a word in a sense other than it is properly meant, and you pass it off as the same thing when you're using the same word to mean two different things. And that is very much a process we are familiar with in the social media age and the propaganda age, and it is a symptom which he was noticing 80 years ago.
I also find it especially prudent that he not only notices that pattern, but sees that it is being most heartily applied if you don't buy into this idea that the way to get out of war is to get into it, which has never left us since the Second World War. Every single time we have engaged in an offensive action, it is with this specific idea. We can avoid war by starting it or by getting into it.
Indeed. Continuing, the Post's position cannot be misunderstood. Before the Blitzkrieg started, we said, what we need for practical security is, first of all, a new word. The word is impregnability, or a state of supreme defense. We need more than a bigger navy. We need two, one for the Atlantic and one for the Pacific, each incomparable. We need an impervious anti-aircraft wall. We need to be able to meet not only any aggressor, but any combination of aggressors. Then we may be sure of the principle of free institutions as a basis of modern civilization shall have, beyond the solace of words, a time yet to live in this world. And that is our position still.
You know, the problem with that, Mr. Quinn, though, is if you have an impregnable navy, then why would the Japanese attack you? And of course, we need the Japanese to attack us, because if they don't, how are we going to stop the war from happening if they don't start the war? So that's the problem with an enormous defensive navy that deters all possible attacks, is that you actually need to be attacked in order to defend yourself. In order to prevent the war, you need to make the war happen. So we wouldn't want to stop the war.
Charlemagne, if we were to not have an impregnable navy, we'd have to do things like send our carriers away from our main base, or right as the Japanese fleet was coming in. That would be mad.
Gentlemen, this is all fantasy, because I have been assured that America is unable to defend herself and must be integrated into the rest of the world to do so.
Well,
there is no Fortress America, I have been told by dozens of people at this point.
Then let us continue to explore the fantasy. Now, the Congress has voted a two-ocean navy. For this proper sea power, for an approach to adequate air power, and for an army of 2 million men, it has voted in a few weeks extraordinary appropriations rising to 10 billions of dollars. We are not interested in the sums. We have to spend a great deal more than 10 billions to create a power of defense equal to the power of aggression that has made this all at once a pirate world without law. The lean and hungry nations, as Mussolini says, out to take what they can from the fat ones by force. That too we have said. It is defense we are thinking about, not war. And what concerns us now is this distinction is becoming blurred. So here we see Congress has voted a $10 billion appropriation for a bigger Navy, 2 million man army, more air power, and Garrett here is saying it's not enough. We need more. So this is not the voice of an idealistic, hippy-dippy peacenik. This isn't a man who thinks we can just, live in the world of Imagine by John Lennon. He realizes that power is material, power is hard, and power is expensive. And he's calling for it, but the important nuance is he's calling for it for defense. He wants to deter war because he does not want to be in war.
It's almost like the government created a navy that was large enough to be perceived as a threat, but not a deterrent.
The other very interesting thing that once again has not left us is that we are equivocating war and defense. Well,
Indeed.
Maybe less now, considering we renamed the department back, but I guess that's neither here nor there.
But no, it's a good point about the continuing evolution of our word shells. What are we preparing for? Defense or war? Either the executive government itself does not know, or it is unwilling to clarify the situation with a few positive words. We suppose the reason why it cannot do this is that it is already too much involved in its own confusions. Pursuing the insidious formula of measures short of war, conceived to begin with on a gross underestimate of the aggressor's power, it was carried headlong into acts of physical intervention for the consequences and implications of which the country was in every way unprepared, to say nothing of the fact it acted without the consent of Congress and beyond the awareness of the people. In his message to France on June 15th, the president said, quote, "The government of the United States has made it possible for Allied armies to obtain, during the weeks that have just passed, airplanes and artillery and munitions of many kinds, and this government, so long as the Allied governments continue to resist, will redouble its efforts in that direction." Unquote. That was the United States government speaking, acting, pledging itself to assist in the war against Hitler in the utmost, short only of an actual declaration of hostilities. It is already too late to save France. Moreover, nothing we've been able to send her, even our total military power, including the Navy, could have saved her, which was a trifling reality the government was unwilling to comprehend. Only 6 weeks later, the Secretary of War is speaking directly for the administration. He is saying what it thinks. The administration thinks that there is a very grave danger of an invasion of this country by Hitler before we can be ready to meet it. But this is the same administration that stripped the American defense of rifles, artillery, munitions, and airplanes and sent them to the Allies. It is the same administration that would have delivered to the British Admiralty our whole mosquito fleet in building if the Congress had not found a law to stop it. It is the same administration that has ever since been trying to find a way to deliver U.S. Navy destroyers to the British. If what it thinks is true, that there is a grave danger of an invasion of this country by Hitler before we can get ready, then we have not a rifle, a gun, an airplane, or a rowboat to spare, nor any industrial capacity. On the day the Secretary of War was making his statement before the House Committee of the New York newspapers, carried pictures of National Guardsmen training with imaginary machine guns devised by plumbers out of gas pipe.
I mean, are you telling me that if we send a ton of material to other places, we also don't get to keep that material?
I mean, we've got plenty of missiles still in the arsenal, don't we? The ones we sent to Ukraine, those were extra. We can imagine the circumstances in which the highest strategy would call for taking war to the enemy. We cannot conceive of circumstances in which it is permitted insanity to slap danger in the face before you are ready to meet it, to name an enemy who has not named you, to attack an enemy who has not yet attacked you before you are ready to fight him.
Let's before you continue there, let's just make note here that he's talking about how the United States is not ready to fight Germany. You might look at World War II and be like, well, the United States defeated Germany. Well, the United States defeated Japan, while Japan was also fighting China and Great Britain and France, by the way, and Australia. So you could say perhaps we were able to defeat Japan. Defeating Germany, I mean, the United States could not have defeated Germany, right? If we just sort of take the world as it was at the time in 1940, and Germany's not going to war with the Soviet Union, how would the United States have gone to war with Germany and won at this point? It would have been completely impossible. No. It would not have been possible to execute a D-Day landing anywhere. There's simply no possibility that the United States could have defeated Germany.
In 1944 and 1945, at no point was the United States fighting more than a third of the German forces. And even though we had massive material superiority, there's no way that campaign would have gone anything like as well as it did if Germany wasn't fighting Russia. It was truly Russia who carried most of the water in defeating Germany and spilt most of the blood.
I mean, even in Italy, as the war came to an end, the United States did not defeat Germany in Italy. They did not defeat the Wehrmacht in Italy in 1945, after the Germans had been utterly crushed by the Soviet Union. So he's spot on here. We have to keep that in mind, that in terms of the U.S., quote, winning the war, this is just sort of on the back of the Soviet Union's unstoppable, hammer coming down on top of the Reich. It's not.
And to be fair, that unstoppable Soviet war machine was riding on American trucks, but nevertheless, it was the Soviets who did the bleeding. The Soviets who soaked up most of the German power.
Yeah, I will say there's a very interesting parallel here, though. This idea of a very overinflated sense of power brought about by power projection through words. That I can't help but see in basically every major power currently operating in the modern day, including us.
Absolutely. Yeah, 100%. I mean, even the events of the last few days have exacerbated this effect. As if the military operation conducted in Venezuela, impressive as it was, certainly. It does not demonstrate the ability to do that, say, to a real adversary like Russia or China or something. These things are not remotely comparable, right?
No, it's not even the same field of action. All right, where was I?
Our enemies.
Our enemies, the administration keeps telling the people, are Germany, Italy, and Japan, naming them. Not one of them has made a gesture of war toward us. For all we think and feel about Hitler, he has not attacked us. He says he does not intend to. We do not believe him. Nobody in the world believes him. Very well. But the American government has attacked Hitler, first by words, then by measures short of war, then by giving a pledge of his enemies to assist them by all physical means to the utmost. In June...
Sorry to keep pausing, but this is just so akin to exactly what we've been doing in Ukraine, and somehow pretending like we're not at war with the Russian Federation, as if anyone believes this shit. Please continue.
In June, the American government entered the war against Hitler by acts of physical intervention, all the worse because they were futile. In July, that same government is telling the people that they are in grave danger of being attacked by Hitler before they can be ready for him. Hitler does not wait, said the Secretary of War to the House Committee on Military Affairs, and the National Guardsmen in New York are training with pipe gas guns. What a triumph for statecraft! What a strategy! What a great face for a great nation! These are the conditions under which we have been created in this country, a war psychosis misled by cries of "Stop Hitler now" and "Defend America by aiding the Allies." We had nothing to stop Hitler with in Europe. A government that either did not know that or made believe that it was so now is saying that if he decided to invade the United States soon, as there is a very grave danger that he may, we are not ready to stop him here. Nevertheless, it goes on to declare against him an economic war, a pan-American economic bloc against his European bloc, for which it is also unprepared, having not thought it through and not having calculated the cost. We do not believe that an invasion of the United States is among the imminent possibilities, which was absolutely correct. The idea of a German invasion of the United States in the 1940s is preposterous. The word of the government, for it does not greatly impress us. A government that had been so wrong about his power to overcome in Europe and about the power of France to resist could very well be wrong again. Nor do we believe that 50 or 60 destroyers from the U.S. Navy would save the British Empire. That would be but another futile act of futile intervention, much more likely to infuriate an enemy we are not prepared to meet than to save a friend. We are bound to be emotionally torn by the spectacle of the British Empire fighting for its life. That is a feeling that lies deep in us and is shared even by those who can think it in a realistic manner. The fall of the British Empire would be a mighty human disaster, yet we part with those who say, or who believe, it would mean the end of American civilization, and part with them again when they would in any degree weaken the American defense to repair the weaknesses of Great Britain's, for which Great Britain, not we, are responsible. We add here two reflections. First, that Great Britain would be stronger if she had stood alone. Second, the enemy is governed by logic, not emotion. We stand, therefore, in our first position. Let us jealously mind our own defense in the great manner of a great people, resolved to let it alone. Let us build at any cost a dreadnought defense power such as no aggressor nor any combination of aggressors will dare to challenge. Thus we forfend war. And meanwhile, for this will take some time, let us look very hard at the state of facts. The German thing has conquered Europe. That will still be true whether the British Empire stands or falls. Who is going to put the German thing back? The British? They are not able. Shall we do it? Unless we are willing to go to Europe and destroy it there, we may as well make our minds up now that we shall have to live in the same world with it. Maybe for a long time, whether we like it or not. Nonetheless, for that reason, only all the more, we must create on this continent an incomparable power of defense. After that, we shall see. For after that, we shall again be what we were, safe, free, and dangerous.
Yeah, and look what happened. It's exactly what he said would happen. It's just the Soviet thing.
Yeah, substitute German thing for Soviet thing, and that's exactly how it played out.
Yeah, there's no retroactively arguing with him here because the thing just becomes the Soviet thing, right? The fact that this was swapped out for that doesn't dismantle his point at all.
Yes, it's still a hegemonic foreign ideology.
I find it very level-headed that he was not freaking out that the entire world and everything we stood for would completely dissolve had Germany been able to keep Europe. Kind of shows how modern and out of place that feeling is that is developed after the war. It's very, very interesting. We have someone from the war writing for the Saturday Evening Post saying we might have to live with it whether we like it or not, and that's just how it could be if someone doesn't put the German thing back. And noticeably, he's not saying that the entire world will collapse, dissolve, explode if the Germans are able to keep Europe. I find that to be a very interesting historical fact. So, with that said, are we ready to move on to the second to last article?
Yeah, what's the page number?
136, and the article title is Definition. Let me pull that up real quick. Sorry.
All right, I'm gonna scroll. I also realized I actually didn't have the first article up on screen, but the last two have been. So
Good.
what's the page? 103.
136.
Oh god, I should have scrolled faster. I'm just gonna do it slowly.
So I do hope that everyone in the audience is kind of able to analogize everything that he's saying into the modern day. It doesn't fit one for one. There are some things that we in the modern day might even disagree with him on geopolitically, but a lot of what he is saying is very much still applicable, and you would only need to edit a few sentences out of these essays to basically just republish them now and speak perfectly to the situation at hand. I hope everyone's seeing that. Shall I read the next article?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so the next one is called Definition, and it appeared February 1st, 1941. And he starts, what is defeatism? Who are defeatists? Appeasers are defeatists if you mean those who could wish their country to buy its peace with the aggressor, either with things of its own or the things of other people, as at Munich. But they are defeatists too, who cry down as appeasers those who are jealous to defend America first. They are defeatists who hold that by selling, lending, leasing, or giving our economic strength to Great Britain, we may hope to save the American way of life without having to fight for it ourselves. If the American people are not willing to fight and die for their way of life, they have already lost it, whether they know it or not. We do not shrink from war. That is not our history. Only let it be our war, not a foreign war. They are defeatists who say, with the New York Times, that what protects our young men from the danger of battle, what gives us such security as we now enjoy, is the body of British civilians exposed of their own free choice to mutilation and death, who could end the war by surrender, but would sooner die than yield. If that were our bulwark, we should be ashamed to speak of protecting our young men from the danger of battle. They are defeatists who say our future security is dependent upon the outcome of the Battle of Britain. Our security now and for all time is entirely dependent on ourselves. They are defeatists who say the only guarantee of peace for America and of freedom for the peoples of the world, including America, is a victory for British arms. There can be no guarantee of peace, now or ever, and if American freedom now is dependent upon a victory of British arms in Europe, American history has been a mistake. Let us erase it. Let us repent in time to save the British Empire if we can, and accept the reward of Dominion status.
One could argue we have Dominion status today, just not of Great Britain.
Sure, and my mind immediately flies to people saying that American history is a mistake in the current day. I also can't help but think that this line has been particularly ignored to our detriment, that there is no guarantee of peace now or ever. Full stop. There is no qualification. There is no guarantee. It is dependent upon ourselves. It's something to remember.
Yes.
Part of not being able to outsource it. They are defeatists who say this country must defend democracy in Europe to save the American way of life. When we were 10 millions, smelting bog iron with charcoal, with no engines, no machines, only very crude tools, we expelled Europe from this continent in order to create the American way of life, and then dared the world to touch it. Now we are 130 million, the richest nation on the earth, with an industrial power equal to that of all Europe combined, and afraid. They are defeatists who talk of making America the non-fighting ally of Great Britain. What is a non-fighting ally? They are defeatists who have doubted the power of America to stand alone in its own hemisphere, to defend itself against any aggressor or combination of aggressors, to make its own world impregnable. They are defeatists who dream of defeating the aggressor without fighting him. They are defeatists who say an Anglo-American alliance is the only alternative to fascism. They are defeatists who would lean upon the gratitude of nations. For what would England be grateful? That we had wrought and sold to her the weapons to fight a war that was said by our government to be our war too? She would remember only the saying she overheard in Washington. It is as if the British were our mercenaries.
Garrett is clearly full of nonsense. In the intervening 80 years, America has never experienced ingratitude from its clients.
Ever. So, I don't know. I can only say that this is so applicable so much. I won't keep repeating it, but I feel incredibly justified putting this on the streaming list. They are defeatists who have brought to pass that state of facts acknowledged in the words of the Committee to Defend America by Aiding the Allies, quote, "We are opposed to appeasement, believing that a negotiated peace would inevitably be at the expense of the United States." That is true, but why is it true? Because we are not yet prepared to accept the consequences of the acts of war and enmity that we have created against Hitler. The weapons we have forged for England might be turned against us. We have no status in the war. We are not Great Britain's ally. And yet Great Britain, owing us nothing, could let us down. Any peace she might negotiate could be at our expense. What a triumph of foreign policy. If only we had learned that lesson in 1940, and if only we had learned that lesson, I guess. They are defeatists who, having involved this country in a war for which it is not prepared, now call upon its fortitude to face the fact that if England falls, we shall have lost the war vessels, the planes, the weapons and munitions delivered to her by the American government out of its own arsenals, its own equipment, its own defense production, at the cost of weakening the national defense, and the possibility that we shall stand at war between two enemies, one in the Atlantic and one in the Pacific, neither of whom had attacked us. They are defeatists who develop the beautiful thought that if America will now put her strength forth in the world, instead of keeping it selfishly to herself, the principle of evil can be chained down. Then all the free and liberal and liberated people will collaborate to bring to pass a just peace in a new world, and live and let live together happily for a millennium. There is no such world in reality. Suppose we had reconquered Europe for democracy, and the principle of evil were chained down. What should we do about the peace? Leave it to Europe? We did that once. It cannot be imagined that Europe would leave it to us. In any case, somehow, there would be the peace because the war had stopped, and we should have some responsibility in it. Should we stay there to police it? Or should we come home and stand ready to go back to mind or mend it when something went wrong? These two are defeatists who say, we say, because they would give America to save the world.
And give America to save the world we did.
Indeed.
And continue. This is, we have not given up our station policing the entire world for the detriment of our own.
A great deal of America to give, but there is not an infinite amount of America to give to save the world.
All right. It's kind of depressing, but only because this is all just warnings that we have never heeded.
Cassandra is seldom cheery reading.
Alrighty. I can take the last article, or either of you two can. It doesn't matter to me.
I can read it. Tell me. 191.
Yes, 191. And this next article is "But Let That Dream Return," June 14th, 1941.
So this is 4 days after Hitler's invasion of the Soviet Union.
Yes.
There are many, like the young man who writes a piece in a magazine saying in effect, "We dreamed the dream of Soviet democracy and it failed us. But where is another? Give us a dream." And then the elders who take up such a thing in the spirit of self-reproach saying, This is the voice of our youth. Our democracy has failed also in this, to provide a dream. In the cloisters of learning, rare minds are revolving the curious thought that in a world of clashing ideologies, American democracy has no ideology to call its own, and it concerns them now to invent one before it is too late. Speak Up for Democracy by Edward L. Bernays. Anybody familiar with that name?
He was an Austrian, if I remember correctly.
A book addressed to all lovers and defenders is a manual on how to sell it, how to write and speak for it, how to meet its enemies and debate and overcome them, how to use the telegraph and telephone buttons, stickers, all the arts of propaganda and publicity to sell it well, he believes, is very important for the national morale. Dr. Hutchins, president of the University of Chicago, asks, is democracy a good form of government? Is it worth dying for? Is the United States a democracy? It is a democracy, and it is worth dying for, he says, because it is the only form of government that combines three characteristics, namely law, equality, and justice. Whereas a totalitarian state has none of these, and hence is the worst of all possible states. But there is then Dorothy Thompson, being crowned for valiancy by Winston Churchill, saying, the democracy we should be willing to fight and die for must be one of a new order, or at least as we go to war for democracy in the world, we must be at the same time thinking up a way to make it work better, especially here, because the democracies are endangered, but not only because they have not got enough guns, but because they have been bracing themselves against the yearnings of all human beings to achieve what they have not achieved and to be what they are not. This must be democracy in the abstract, a thing in itself, outside of people. Are democracies that resist the yearnings of human beings democracies? Or do people resist themselves? It may be, of course, that the trouble with democracy is people. We agree with Dr. Hutchins that what he calls the three characteristics of democracy are worth fighting for, but that it is his democracy. There is in his school no student of history who does not know that something calling itself democracy may possess none of these characteristics, but in the place of them, the one characteristic of tyranny. That, of course, would not be that what either we or Dr. Hutchins would call a democracy, but it would be what someone else had called a democracy. Any thoughts there? Such words as freedom, justice, and equality have souls, and it is only for words with souls that men are willing to fight and die. In the word democracy, if the word democracy has a soul left, it dies of its own too much. It is an omnibus word, an unregulated common carrier, a common depot for political and social ideas, meaning so many different things to so many different people, it means precisely nothing.
I do have a thought there. Before we get to the main point there about this equivocation of democracy, words with souls is a very powerful way to conceive of things.
Yeah, that is an extremely powerful turn of phrase. I like that. But the larger point, yes, is that democracy has been watered down to mean good thing, and tyranny has been watered down to mean bad thing, and there's really no more content to it than that.
And somehow we're still consuming this contentless garbage. This is still being served to us on a daily basis.
On the daily. Therefore, whether the United States is a democracy or not, we do not know, speaking for ourselves alone. It was once a republic, that we do know. We have thought that the difference was important. To elucidate it, we have written many small essays on the science of government and on the age-old and still unsolved problem of how to reconcile government with liberty, the natural tendency being, as Jefferson said, for the government to gain and people to give way, for government to extend its authority and for people to surrender it, surrender to it their responsibilities and liberties. Yet now, as we face the question